Hello, my name is Jersey Garcia, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also an EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, tapping relationship coach. And I'm also the creator, developer, author of the journal From Broken to Fulfilled Heart, a women's journal for getting through a relationship breakup. And today, in this video, I want to provide you with information of how to use EFT tapping to help you through those heavy emotions that sometimes come up when you remember things that are related to the recent relationship breakup that you had, or the person that you were in relationship with, or some incidents that maybe happened during that relationship that are basically right now making you feel overwhelmed or heavy emotions. So I learned when I went through my relationship breakup several years ago, how sometimes we go through this wave of emotions when we are going through a relationship workshop. And I wish I knew tapping then, or had the emotional freedom techniques training that I now have to help me navigate, or would have helped me navigate those heavy emotions that come up. So what you will need for this video, or just to review and learn how to do it, is that you're going to need some, just to prepare, get some water. Always have some water handy before you start tapping. It's a really good thing to have some water to have by you, that you can use, that you can take, and that you can drink to hydrate yourself, especially after you finish tapping. The second thing is going to be your tapping worksheet. This is included in the journal. You can find it in the back pages, in the daily pages, but also you have several copies of blank tapping worksheets. I will put in this video, like in the next minute or two, just a mock or a sample tapping worksheet, just so you can go along and you can see what it looks like if you don't have the journal. And the third thing that you will need is a pen or a pencil so you can complete your tapping worksheet. So here you are. You have now a copy of your tapping worksheet. You have your water and you have your pen. I wanted to show you just a copy of a mock or sample tapping worksheet. It probably doesn't have the same design as the one included in the journal, but this is kind of like exactly what you will find in the tapping worksheet. So it's right here. As you can see on the top, it says tapping worksheet. Then it will tell you, or the question that comes up is, what do you want to work on? What is the emotion? What is the incident that you're going to want to work on? So you write that in there. That's the section to write it. After, you move into your setup statement. And we're going to move into all these parts, and I'm going to show you how to do it. But then you complete your setup statement and you write it down. What would your setup statement will be like? That's the portion of the part where you are going to just put that there. Then you're going to also write down what are going to be your reminder phrases. And your reminder phrases, remember, I'm also going to talk to you about the other points where your reminder phrases are going to be going towards. And usually those are more connected to the emotion that is going on or that is coming up for you based on the incident or the thing that you're working on. Then we move into doing the tapping with that reminder phrases. And then once we are done, well, let's say we do one round of tapping, we then kind of assess and think and see how are we feeling, if that emotion is still there, how heavy it is. And then depending if it's still there and it's still heavy, depending on the suds, or basically the intensity of the emotion from 0 to 10, if it's still really high, we're gonna do other rounds. So that's why there's space there where you can just be able to write down the different rounds of tapping that you're doing. At the end of the page, you'll see you can journal a little bit about and write a little bit of the things that came up during your tapping, as well as how are you feeling after the tapping round. So it just gives you space on that tapping worksheet for you to journal a little bit, write out What was your process? How did it go? How are you feeling now? And maybe some things that maybe popped up for you after the tapping. Okay. Now that we reviewed the tapping worksheet and you had a kind of a visual of what it looks like, we're going to start. I'm going to go through the whole process of what goes through that tapping worksheet with you. And I'm going to give you an example. So, for instance, what is the issue that you want to, or the emotion or the incident that you are wanting to tap around? So, for as an example, I will want to tap, for instance, on just remembering how when my partner told me that he no longer was interested in having a relationship with me and that he was basically leaving, and just the thought of that and remembering that incident just makes me feel very sad. Just thinking about it made me feel very, very sad. Um, so I will put in and what is the issue that that I'm going to work on. So the issue that I will be working on, let's say in filling out my tapping worksheet, is like just hearing, just remembering when I heard him tell me that he was no longer interested in me and no longer interested in being in this relationship, and it just brings this sadness. So what I do is like I write that down. The next thing that I do is that I just assess and I decide and see how much of it is it is from what's the intensity of this sadness that I'm feeling from 0 to 10. How intense is it? Is it a 0? I don't have no intensity. I don't have any sadness. Or is it an 8, or is it a 9, or is it a 10? 10 is the most intense, the largest or the highest intensity that you can have around this particular feeling. So just checking in with myself and just thinking about that time when my ex-partner just told me that he wasn't interested in being with me, and the sadness that comes up just thinking about it, I feel like an 8. Okay, so I make note of that and I put there next on the thing what I'm working on, I put that it was the intensity is an 8. If you have time, you can assess to where are you feeling that sadness in your body. Sometimes you don't know, sometimes you can't assess, but sometimes you can. I mean, for me right now, just thinking about that moment brings a lot of sadness and I can feel it all over my chest. This is just to let you know that you can also tune into your body when we are in heavy emotion. Sometimes the last thing that we want to do is tune in into our bodies, and it's good for us to tune in so we can hopefully be able to release it with tapping. So now I did 2 to 3 things, right? The first thing that I did was like, what is the event? What is the thing that has me upset? So it's the thought of remembering when this person, my ex, told me that he wasn't interested in being with me anymore. What emotion brings that up? What is the emotion that comes up for me when I think of that moment? Sadness. I rated from a 0 to 10. How heavy, how intense was that emotion? And I assessed that it was an 8 for me, or is an 8 currently, just thinking about that moment. And then I check in with my body. I'm like, where do I feel this sadness? Oh, I feel it here in my chest. Okay, great. So these 4 things that I did. So now that I know I have that basically on the part that I am working on, I move into creating my setup statement. And so we know that we start our setup statement with even though, and then we include in that statement what is it that the emotion that I'm feeling, and we can connect it with the incident or the moment, and then we finish it up with I deeply and completely accept myself. And we know that we need a setup statement because this is how we start tapping. We say our setup statement 3 times before we start tapping in the other parts of our body, which I will also move into letting you know which are the other tapping points. So, setup statement for this particular incident is for me is that even though I feel all this sadness, just thinking about the time my ex told me that he was not interested in being with me anymore, I deeply and completely accept myself. So, just to repeat it again, even though I feel all this sadness, just thinking about that moment, that day when you can even add the name if you have the person's name or you want to use that name, or my ex partner told me that he was not interested in being with me any longer, I deeply and completely accept myself. Once you have that, please write it down. Write it down in that area where it says my setup statement, right? Remember that the setup statement starts, and we do setup statement on the side of the hand. Again, I will talk to you about the different tapping points after this. After you have already your setup statement and you have written it down in your tapping worksheet, then you move into what will be your reminder phrases. For me, in this incident, I'm going to be using all the sadness, all the sadness, all the sadness. Sometimes I will add also all the sadness, just thinking about that when he said no to me, or when he no longer wanted to be with me. But this is what I'm gonna write down in my reminder phrases. I'm gonna put all the sadness, and I'm also gonna put when he left, when he told me that he wasn't interested in me anymore. Okay, so we already now have a setup statement, and you also have your reminder phrases. Okay, now I want to go over the tapping points. They are also included in the journal, but just as a review and as a reminder. So we have side of the hand, and this is where we say our setup statement. Remember, it doesn't matter which side of the hand. You can use whichever side. This is my left hand or your right hand. And it's usually on this side. It's the side where your pinky is, and in this side is where you start tapping. In this side, or in this point, in this tapping point, again, side of the hand tapping point, is where you will be tapping your setup statement. Remember, your setup statement, you say it 3 times. So 3 times, because you're setting up your body, your brain, to start tapping. It's letting your brain know, hey, we're going to tap, and we're going to tap around this particular issue. That's why we're going to say the setup statement 3 times in this way, just to let the brain know, hey, this is what we're going to start doing. We're going to start tapping around this particular issue and this particular emotions, okay? Then we are going to move into, once we finish with our 3 times of expressing or sharing our setup statement while tapping on the side of the hand, then we move into our reminder phrases, and we start at the top of the head, right? Top of the head, and it's all the sadness. And then we move to eyebrow point right here. You can do it with 2 hands, or you can just do it with 1. So all the sadness. Then we do side of the eye. That's another tapping point. All the sadness. All the sadness, just thinking about that time when he told me that he's no longer interested in me. Under the eye is the next point. All the sadness. All the sadness. Under the nose is the next tapping point. All the sadness. Just thinking about the time that he told me that he's no longer interested in me. All the sadness. And this is the chin point. This is the next tapping point. All the sadness. I repeat my reminder phrases. Then I move to the collarbone point. You can do it with 2 hands again, or you can do it with 1. Doesn't matter. And I repeat all the sadness. Just all the sadness. And then I move to what we call underarm, and it's usually like where if a woman that is using a bra or uses bra, it's like on the side where we will usually have a bra strap. So we tap there, and we say all the sadness. I will say all the sadness, just thinking about that time. when he told me that he's no longer interested in me. All the sadness. So I usually for myself, I do two rounds. So I will continue and do another round of tapping on the top of the head, all the sadness, 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 all the sadness. And I rest. I usually take a sip of water like this. And I check with myself to see, and I remember, I'm trying to remember, just thinking about that time when he told me that he's no longer interested in me. And I see and I check, am I still sad? Is I still feeling sadness? Is it still at an 8? Is it maybe it went down to a 5? Is it still in my chest? Maybe it moved to my throat. Sometimes it does that. It will move because again, emotions are in our bodies and they tend to move and navigate. So you also will find that sometimes you are in an 8 or you started with an 8 and you go all the way to a 10 the next time that you're going to start tapping. So and that's what you assess once you finish at least one round of tapping, for you to assess and see where you are at in the emotion. If it's still at the level that you originally found that it was, has it gone up or down? And if it's still in that part of the body that you assess it was originally, then you start again. You would begin again with your tapping statement, with your setup statement if you want to refine it, but you probably don't need to refine it, because if it's still the same emotion, you don't need to change it. If you notice that, for instance, you finished tapping and that sadness is no longer there, but all of a sudden you feel anger. So for instance, I might have checked on myself and said, I don't feel sad at all, just thinking about the time when he told me that he is no longer interested in me. And I went and what I'm feeling now, it's anger. Now I changed then the emotion in my setup statement to anger. And remember to check in, where in your body is anger now? Is it maybe in your head? Your head starting to pound? Or is it maybe your chest again is starting to feel angry? So we start, even though I feel all this anger, just thinking about that time when he told me that he's no longer interested in me. I deeply and completely accept myself. And then all this anger, all this anger, all this anger, all this anger. Just thinking about that time when he told me that he was no longer interested in me. All this anger, this anger, this anger. Taking a deep breath and drinking some water, and again assessing. When you finish and you feel like you no longer have an emotional intensity, whatever emotion you had, with regards to that particular event, then you are good to go. You can journal a little bit, see what comes up. Sometimes other things come up, some memories of other things that happen, or maybe something that maybe gives you more of a hopeful or optimistic way of viewing the situation, or what really occurred. Or maybe gives you some solutions or idea of how to move forward. I hope that this has been helpful for you. I definitely believe that EFT or tapping helps immensely when we're going through a relationship breakup, to help us manage those heavy emotions that come up, that they come in waves, and especially when we remember incidents or moments in time that we had with this person, with this partner, with this ex, that it's right. Sometimes we feel so overwhelmed around them, and it's good for you to create the practice, especially as you're going through this journey of breakup and heartbreak, to start doing it on a daily basis, or even every other day, and just pull out your tapping worksheet. And today, what do I want to tap on. And it could be something that you're really pissed off about that person or what that person did, or sometimes sadness. There's definitely a whole bunch of emotions. There's also shame. There's a whole plethora of emotions that we can process. We can definitely help, that EFT and tapping will help you process. And what we want is for you to get to a place where there's not that emotional intensity attached to that particular experience or incident. So we can move through and get through to what we need to get through, and be. Um, Again, I hope that this video is helpful and provides you with the information and all the things that you need to know how to do tapping on your own, especially to help you go through these heavy emotions when you're going through a relationship breakup. Bye for now. Thank you again for purchasing the journal or for acquiring the journal, or maybe it was gifted to you. I hope that it is helpful. I hope that it is of service to you. I hope that it's a companion when you're going through this really difficult time. But just to let you know from somebody that's been through it, you'll get through it. You'll get to the other side, and I hope that the journal helps you get there. Okay? Take care. Bye for now.